I am including a copy of this resume in written form for all of those who prefer to read it. You can find the link in the description section to this video. I'm also including a link for a free copy of my book, A Handbook to Freedom.
Hello everyone, this is my political resume. Beware, this is going to get pretty wild. Here's an incredible idea on how to greatly improve the voting system. Imagine a place where you could go and see in depth each political candidate's stances and views on life. Think of how much this would help the entire voting system. This is my first go at such an idea. I challenge all candidates of any office to have the honesty to show the people how you truly feel and who you really are. I'm going first to show it can be done, even though I legally can't win. But I did pay my dues and filed for the county to run for sheriff. Currently, it seems politicians deliberately try to stay as vague and broad as possible in an attempt to appeal to everyone. This resume is as in-depth as it gets and will guarantee transparency and accountability with all politicians, thus ensuring we know what to expect and what kind of person we are voting for. This will also provide a forum for politicians to interact with the voters or each other even. And one final bonus is that there will be a record of where the politicians stood if they end up lying while in office. I also have an idea where political opponents sit down across from each other and debate ideas and solutions. I will personally sit down on camera with anyone and discuss these ideas for the world to see. I think sitting down and working together for the most logical solutions will be a huge factor in fixing all of our problems. This resume will also be a great tool that will tremendously help fix the voting system. Candidates can choose to answer the question or say pass. From there, we the people can make our own much more informed decisions based on the candidate's answers, or lack thereof. I challenge every politician out there to have the integrity to fill out this resume. Please share this idea far and wide. This resume will be broken down into two main parts, a personal information section and a stances section, which starts on number 27. Political resume. Number 1, my name, Josh Butterfield. Number 2, the job you're applying for. Sheriff or president. Write in for both, but I can only legally file for write-in for sheriff. Number 3, party affiliation. Localism. I do not abide by either wing of the two-party system. To me, it seems like it is deliberately set up to divide and control us. So I created my own party called Localism, where the local community just works together to make their communities flourish, right where we are living. It is very close to the libertarian mindset, but keeps everything on a local level. Number 4, opening statement. I know it is impossible for me to win in any way. I am just running to try and help create solutions to the many problems we now face. I made a promise to my son who passed away that I would do all I can to make the world a better place. All I'm trying to do is create peace in this world. I believe freedom will create peace, as we all just want the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone. Ultimately, I think self-sufficiency is the key to freedom. I can't win and I don't want to win. I just want to help see the best ideas be put in place for the community. I will gladly sit down and discuss these ideas with anyone. I am completely putting myself out there, knowing it doesn't look good for me. I've had a pretty wild life. I'm just trying to create transparency and honesty in the voting system. This has nothing to do with me, as I truly don't want to be a politician. But I am stepping forward and showing what I think would be the most beneficial solutions to fixing the massive problems within the system. Instead of complaining about all the problems in the world, I look for answers. We have to start somewhere, and instead of fighting all the time, we can hopefully sit down and work together for solutions. From there, the best ideas can be picked up and used by local communities everywhere. Number 5, age. I'm 43, born September 8th, 1981. Number 6, sex. I am a male. Number 7, religion. None. I see pieces of truth in all religions. I also see flaws. What I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt is that energy is all throughout the universe, and energy connects everything. I do enjoy learning about all religions. Number 8, relationship status. I'm single and divorced. I was with my children's mother for 8 years. After my divorce, I had a girlfriend for 10 years. I've now been single for over 2 years. Number 9, how many kids do you have? I have 2 biological and 2 bonus. I have 1 biological grandson and 3 bonus grandchildren. Me and my ex-girlfriend refer to each other's kids as our bonus kids. They biologically aren't ours, but we will always be a family, no matter what. Number 10, pets. I got 1 dog. He's Pitbull. Number 11, sexual orientation. Straight. Number 12, criminal history. I had a hard time growing up, with a lot of very deep problems being thrown at me, so it kind of turned me into a bad kid for a while. I have lived, learned, and grown up a lot since then. Once I had kids, my life's priorities changed, and I made my kids my top priority in life. My kids and my grandkids are my entire world. I grew up and stopped doing all the dumb stuff I was doing. A majority of this stuff is from over 20 years ago. Most of these infractions are not on my case net if you look me up. So I don't have to tell any of this. But in order to keep my integrity with telling the whole truth, I will tell the whole story. When I was 13, I stole my mom's truck and ran away. I was locked up and tried breaking out of that place, so I was put in with the adults. From there, I became custody of the state for a couple of years, and actually did run away from a couple of the places they locked me up in. I ran away at least 3 times. When I was 18, I got an assault on a minor charge. He was 16. I had 2 friends that were in a fist fight. There was a crowd of about 50 people watching. At some point, friend number 2 left his passenger in the truck, and friend number 1 stayed at the baseball field with about 50 people. Friend number 2 came back, and the truck he was riding in drove onto the baseball field and almost hit the crowd of people. Then they stopped the truck in the middle of the baseball field. From there, the passenger door was opened and the fight continued. At that point, everyone surrounded the truck. While the fight was happening, friend number 2 in the passenger seat told his friend driving to drive away. I told the driver, don't do it, as there is no possible way he couldn't run over people. I told him not to reach for the gear shift or I'd punch him to keep from running over people. We were all just stupid kids and it was a tense situation. After much hesitation, he went to grab the gear shift, with the truck running and completely surrounded by people. I punched him once in the face to stop him from going anywhere. He unfortunately was wearing glasses, which broke and cut his face open in the process. I paid restitution. It was a stupid mistake on all our parts. You live and you learn. I was around 19 and I was racing home with a friend at 3 in the morning. I was in the lead and went home and didn't think anything of it. About an hour later, a police officer knocked on my door and gave me tickets for road racing in excess of 100 miles an hour and evading the police. I promise on everything, I never even knew he was chasing me. I never even saw the sirens. I spent 2 weeks in jail and paid heavy fines. When I was 20, I did the dumbest thing I have ever done in my life. My buddies and me were watching Gone in 60 Seconds and drinking heavily. A dare was made I wouldn't replicate the movie. I'm not blaming the movie, it was 100% my own dumbass fault. I kicked open the door and to a used car dealership and stole keys to a Ford Probe GT. I couldn't figure out how to match keys to cars. It was a random car. I crashed the car through the woods in the middle of nowhere. The very next day I woke up and thought it was a dream. When I realized it wasn't, I immediately went and apologized to the dealership owner and offered to pay more for the car and to please drop the charges. He said no, and I ended up getting 5 years supervised probation. I paid restitution as well. Through it all, I ended up realizing how bad alcohol was for me and that I had a problem. So it did have a silver lining. But it was solidly the dumbest thing I've done in my life, and I've done a lot of dumb stuff. I have 2 judgments against me. The same thing happened 2 different places I was renting. I put money into fixing something that was broken at the home and not my fault. They refused to reimburse me. I refused to pay rent. They got judgments against me. There were times I was late, but I always caught up. About 10 years ago, I got a DWI. A close friend had a bachelor party and I decided to drink, which I very rarely do. I got pulled over at 2 in the morning for crossing the white line on W, a very curvy road. I was also giving 2 guys a ride that were hitchhiking. The legal limit is .08. I blew a .082. For the record, the breathalyzer machine has an error rate of .005 if calibrated correctly, which no calibration record was provided. I was also not allowed to go to the bathroom, which I desperately needed to do. I was pulling into the gas station when I got pulled over. That would have lowered my BAC as well. But I was above the legal limit according to the breathalyzer. My punishment was rehab since I had been to rehab previously for marijuana while on probation 10 years prior. I also had to pay lots of money. I've had a ton of minor driving infractions. I believe in the no victim, no crime principle and that our freedoms shouldn't be taken and sold back to us. I use my rights to the fullest to fight minor victimless crime tickets such as seatbelts, license plates, insurance, and other frivolous victimless crime charges. These crimes' only punishment is money to people who are usually struggling to get by in the first place. Many times their crime is nothing more than being poor. I believe the resources invested prosecuting these crimes should instead be spent solving crimes with victims involved. Ultimately, money is not a fair punishment for everyone, and the only outcome is untracked revenue for the court. I feel we need to be trying to seek justice for those harmed instead of generating revenue from victimless crimes in the land of the free. And finally, I owe the IRS a lot of money. I was very poor growing up, but I created my own business all by myself by the time I was 23. I was making over $100,000 a year, laying tile commercially, traveling across the country. I started my employees at $1,000 a week. At one time, I had 25 employees. When I started on my own, I had never seen that kind of money before. I was so busy working that I never did any paperwork. I didn't do my taxes at first and just kept working, figuring I would catch up at the end of the year. My job was insanely hectic and I was overwhelmed with it all. By the time the first year ended and I figured out how bad my debt was, it had become too much to ever make up. Keep in mind I had no record of what I had paid employees or how to even contact many of them, as they were random people from the state I was working in. But I kept on working for 10 years and never kept record or filed any taxes the whole time. It was all 1099 and not W-2. The IRS eventually showed up at my house and said I owe them $700,000. I said I have a truck worth a couple thousand, and I refused to tell on my employees and ruin their lives. I did offer some knowledge on some corporate corruption I had seen, but they did not seem interested at all about that. I've seen there is a lawyer offering $100,000 if anyone can offer the law that states we have to pay income tax, as there is no official statute. You cannot lie to them, as that is a crime. So they said they would put me in an uncollectible status, and after 10 years it would go off my record. They said if I ever made more than $35,000 a year, they would take it. I signed an agreement saying I wouldn't make more than $35,000 a year, and I honor it. Since then, it has been more than 10 years since it was filed. The $700,000 should officially be off my record. More back years from when I was working on the road have been filed since then, and I currently owe over $100,000, but nothing has become of it yet. Since then, I've personally drawn a line in the sand and refused to pay my income taxes. I morally don't agree with what our federal government is doing, and I will no longer contribute. I plan to represent myself in court, which I commonly do and win. I will be questioning the system itself and taking it to a jury trial. Lawyers can't question the system because if they do, they will lose their bar license. Our politicians are clearly breaking laws on a massive scale. If I could prove they are using the government to break laws, I could prove how I legally don't have to be an accessory to their crimes. Also, the taking of anyone's possessions against their will is theft. Ultimately, taxation is theft. I would gladly pay taxes if I could decide what part of my taxes go where. Imagine a multiple choice questionnaire where we decide what government institutions we contribute to and how much we give them. From there, simply make those departments work from the budgets we give them. Taking it a step further, imagine if we cut all the waste to the federal government and we just used our income taxes to raise up our local communities instead. It's clear the federal government is massively wasting our money. Picture if everyone everywhere just invested all our money locally. Just think of how much further we could make our dollars go and how much we could improve our communities. We can't continue to allow the government to write blank checks for whatever they want at the expense of our children's future. This idea would also balance the budget tomorrow, as they don't spend money they don't have. I am a minimalist, and I have kept my word and honored my agreement with the IRS. I work for myself, by myself most of the time. I don't make more than $35,000 a year, even though technically a couple years ago our agreement was done. But even if I did make more than that, I wouldn't pay them. I'm getting ready to raise my limit as inflation has hit hard. I do try to help out the community a lot. Number 13, current court cases. I currently have an insurance ticket. I was honest and told the court I had insurance, but instead of showing proof, I wish to take it to a jury trial. I believe car insurance is just like health insurance and is a tax. I also believe in the Constitution and our ability to achieve life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If we have to pay a major insurance company before we can travel, those rights have been taken, especially since we have done nothing wrong, and if there is no victim, there is no crime. You can't just take my freedoms and then sell them back to me. We also can't bubble wrap the world and make everyone pay for pre-crimes they have not yet committed. How about boat insurance, or bicycle insurance, or even ladder insurance? Where does it end? Ultimately, it's our own free will to decide to protect our possessions or not. The forcing of people to pay insurance is a theft of freedom and creates massive profits for insurance companies. Ironically enough, insurance companies don't always pay and are a struggle to deal with after we are all forced to pay them. So I always use my rights to the fullest, represent myself, and take insurance tickets to a jury trial. All this in an effort to appeal to the jury through jury nullification, a form of checks and balances that allows us to put in check unjust laws. I know it's a very long shot for me to win, but that is a risk I'm willing to take to stand up for freedom. Currently, the prosecutor is doing all that he can to prove my innocence, as he knows I had insurance, but I won't provide it. I should be able to represent myself in any manner I choose, considering they brought the charges to me and the Constitution guarantees me a jury trial. So instead of showing them proof, I wish to take it to a jury trial so I can try to appeal to the jury that the law is unjust. Once again, I see courtrooms full of people who are struggling to get by, and the only punishment is a fine. The system's resources should be invested in solving crimes instead of taking money from people who are already struggling to get by. Number 14, do you drink, smoke, or do drugs? I started smoking marijuana when I was 14. I still smoke today, all day, every day. It helps me a lot medicinally with my stomach problems and with anxiety. I drink alcohol about 3 times a year in a controlled environment. I microdose a very tiny amount of mushrooms a couple of times a year. Mushrooms are illegal in some states and is proven to help depression. I absolutely refuse to take pills of any kind and won't even take Tylenol for a headache. I refuse all medications and always try to find the cause of my ailment and address it through natural means. Number 15. What drugs or alcohol have you done, legal or illegal? I want to start by saying I have seen both sides in this world. I feel in order for someone to truly understand drugs and addiction, they must have lived it at some point in their life. It's easy to speak of things you don't understand, but until you live it, you don't honestly know. I started smoking cigarettes when I was 16 and smoked a pack a day until I quit 10 years ago. I was a raging alcoholic at one point in my life and would wake up and drink straight Jim Beam and whiskey until I passed out. I did this for months on end. I eventually realized I was an alcoholic and that alcohol had ruined my life. I completely quit for over a decade. I now regretfully drink 2 or 3 times a year, usually socially or sometimes when I am super stressed. When I was younger, places I was locked up in would give me prescription pills for anger and depression, justifiable emotions for what I had been through, but I still wasn't handling them well. They gave me everything, but notably Zoloft and Klonopin. I've taken a lot of the legal pills created: Percocet, Oxy, morphine, Valium, Vicodin, Adderall, muscle relaxers. I did meth maybe 10 times, about the same with coke. I never touched needles. I did a lot of acid and ecstasy and mushrooms. I even huffed stuff. I'm not proud of what I have done. I haven't done any of that stuff in decades, minus the weed, shrooms, and alcohol. But it is my story and has led me to where I am now. Marijuana is far better than any of the others, and I believe it should be used to help replace other worse addictions. I have experienced almost all forms of addiction firsthand, either by doing it or watching those I love do it. I've lost friends and family to addiction. It's truly heartbreaking. I advocate for sobriety and to try to always help those struggling with addiction. Just because somebody is doing drugs or alcohol doesn't mean their life is ruined. It just means they're going through something. Anyone can overcome addiction and put it behind them at any time. Number 16, years in the community. I was raised by a single mother who moved here when I was 5 into Gravois Mills, Missouri, so I've been here 38 years. Number 17, references. I do not want to affiliate anyone with me. I'm a little wild and outspoken, and not everyone likes what I have to say. I don't want any blowback to come to anyone for something I say. Number 18, previous places lived. I've been to 47 states and lived in roughly 25. I was born in Texas. Then my parents moved to their native town outside San Diego, California until I was 5. Then my mom split communication with my dad and moved out here. I've been here since. When I worked on the road laying tile, most of the jobs took roughly 2 months. So I lived in a lot of places for 2 months at a time. I'm not sure how many states I did this in, but 25 is a fair guess. I've been to all types of huge cities and rural towns. There was no telling where I would go. Beaches, cities, suburbs, one-horse towns, you name it. I've lived in a lot of places. Number 19, education. I dropped out the day I turned 16, and I legally could. I then got my GED. When I took the test, I was super sick with a bad fever and spent a lot of time going to the bathroom. I didn't even finish a huge portion of the test. I still scored high enough to get a college scholarship if I wanted. And I went to work instead and was making over $100K a year from my own hands before my friends were even out of college. Number 20, any major medical problems? I had a lot of major stomach surgeries. I even had a colostomy once. I spent 2 years in the hospital as a kid, from the ages 11 to 13, and almost died many times. I spent a lot of time in the severe ward at Children's Mercy Hospital. Some of my roommates that were kids didn't make it. I did get to meet Derek Thomas with the Kansas City Chiefs, though. I've been split open over 10 times and am in medical books for experimental procedures. I'm doing great now, though. Number 21, current job. I'm a self-employed business owner. I call my business Demolition Man, and I haul trash and do demolition. I tend to work by myself. Number 22, previous jobs. I've done a lot of different jobs. I get bored easily and start new jobs with the intention to learn all aspects. I always try to become the best at any job I do. Once I get really good at a job, I usually get bored with it and switch jobs again. I'm best at driving and can drive anything on the planet. I even race quads. From there, I've done almost every building trade, car mechanics, heavy machinery, truck driver, sales, and worked in the service industry. I even have experience as a lawyer for myself. Number 23, any extra knowledge, skills, or trades? I know a lot about how government is run and who runs it behind the scenes. I also know a lot about government corruption. I have multiple ideas on how to make things better. I'm a good leader in stressful situations. I'm also great at problem solving. Number 24, hobbies. Riding bikes or quads, football, baseball, chess, and pretty much anything competitive. Number 25, why do you want this job? I'm afraid our economy is going to collapse, or that we are going to face some kind of major crisis in the near future. I want to try and help the local community get prepared. I also want to see us have as much freedom from an oppressive federal government as possible. The sheriff has the most power in the county to do these things. Number 26, why will you be best at this job? I will stand up and put myself between my community and an oppressive federal government when I am not sure others will. I have consecutively stood up to the government corruption, nepotism, and abuses of power here on the local level. I stood up for people and businesses when COVID hit, and I've even went as far as getting kicked out of the health department, the commission meetings, and the school, all for holding them accountable for abuses of power. Search Freedom Press Media on Facebook to see the entire history of it all. I was very detailed. Number 27, what ideas or solutions do you have to make things better? I wrote a book called A Handbook to Freedom, and it has all kinds of ideas for every aspect of life. There is way too much to try and cover here, but I'll give an overview real quick. I do give the book away for free. I also go in depth on every idea and aspect on my YouTube channel, Butterfield Unleashed. The first major solution I have is to put the power back in the people's hands. I think the federal government is no longer run by us, and that it's run by money. To overcome this, we must put all the power in as small as government as possible and allow local communities to decide their way of life locally. From laws to taxes, it's all decided locally. The smaller the government, the more chance the people can overcome money and greed. The larger the government, the more money will be in charge of the outcome. This is simply the reality of all of our governments on all levels. We can give the local community ultimate power by passing a petition and voting into effect a home rule charter, which allows local communities the ultimate power over government control and how it's ran. I have an idea for a voluntary tax system for both individuals and businesses. I also invented a form of checks and balances to stop all government corruption called a justice box, basically allowing we the people to decide to take things to trial or not. I have a couple ideas on how to fix the currency and have it not be manipulated by interest rates and inflation. It's long, but it's possible. I created an energy invention that would dramatically help the world, and I'm open sourcing every aspect of it. Another solution I'm sharing is to help the homeless by creating shelters under overpasses. I have an invention for a plastic recycling machine that recycles plastics into building materials. The homeless can then create these shelters themselves from recycled plastic that they gather from around the cities they live in. They clean the cities and create shelters for themselves all at once. I even have an idea to help clean the planet of the CO2 our cars create by growing hemp on a massive level. Hemp is a super sponge for CO2 and can be used for everything. I'm into prepping for a disaster and have an idea for a grocery store created from local goods that is run like a consignment store. All items would be created and dispersed locally. This works great in case of a grid or supply chain ever goes down, or a government shutdown. I also have an answer for balancing the budget. I invented a better way of electing politicians for larger elections, and most importantly to me, I try to create peace in this world. I even have a peace treaty I worked up. We have to start somewhere. I have a solution to make sure no innocent people are harmed in wars, but I also included an idea on how to allow people to still go to battle if need be. I cover just about every problem we face in my book and try to offer some kind of solution to them all. My ideas may not be the best ideas, but insanity is doing the same thing over and expecting different results. We have to start somewhere, and a lot of this stuff is just me opening up the conversation. I know we can fix things. We just have to try. I think that if we all just sit down and work together, we can figure out the best solutions possible. But it takes us being able to sit down with opposing sides and working together to solve our problems. Which leads me to my next idea, where opposing sides sit and exchange ideas peacefully. A debate turned into a game where people can go back and forth with each other and still be civil. If someone can't be civil, they lose the game. This would also work great for politicians because it would show the voters much more in depth about each candidate. It would show the people who has the most efficient solutions, as well as who handles themselves the best under pressure. Another idea I have is a political resume. And now for the stances section. Number 28, views on abortion. Let's allow local communities to decide. You can never change somebody else's perspective. All you can do is try to make where you're standing the best you can through your eyes. Personally, I feel that life logically begins when sperm hits the egg. But I also believe in freedom over one's body. So I'm conflicted, but my personal choice is to let nature happen. Number 29, views on immigration. Let any immigrants that are already here stay here. Let's work to give them citizenship. If they are committing crimes, hold them accountable through due process. Do not give them government aid or allow them to vote until they become citizens, a process that usually takes 3 to 5 years. Have criminals pay for imprisonment by having prisons produce goods. Prisoners get privileges based on how many hours they work. Make it to where they aren't forced to work and can voluntarily decide how many privileges they want to work for. From there, bring the troops home and protect our borders. Simply ensure that people coming into our country have good intentions. Number 30, views on freedom. I believe every question should be answered with the utmost freedom possible, unless someone has been harmed, in which case due process should occur. But if there is no victim, freedom should always be the answer to everything. Number 31, views on the Constitution. I think the Constitution is our most important document we have as a nation, especially the Bill of Rights. That's the single document that ensures our freedoms and makes us the best country on the planet. We just have to stand up and fight for our freedoms and the Constitution, because politicians have created laws to overturn it. The Constitution is the ultimate law of the land, and any elected official, officer, judge, or military personnel took an oath to uphold it. We have to realize those running our country are overthrowing the Bill of Rights. At some point, we have to stand up if we ever hope to set things right and ensure our freedoms. I'm suggesting doing it peacefully and legally on a local level. We could pass around a petition for a home rule charter and decide our own ways of life locally. We stay united as a country, but we work locally for the way of life we choose. Number 32, views on gun control. I believe the Second Amendment and our right to bear arms should never be infringed upon. I think anyone should be allowed to own any weapon they can fire while holding. The only time your freedom to own guns can be taken is if due process has occurred and is decided such individually per person by a court case. I also feel the government should not have any access to the weapons beyond those the population can have. We must be on an equal playing field as the government, otherwise it leaves the population vulnerable to government oppression. Number 33, views on freedom of speech. I believe any censorship of one's speech is a crime. We have to be allowed to speak freely, even if somebody doesn't like it. We all have the ability to ignore it. It's up to us to adequately handle what the world presents us. We can't control the world. All we control is ourselves. We can't silence a certain perspective just because we don't agree with it. Guaranteed, somebody does not agree with your perspective either. So in order to freely speak our own views, we must respect others' freedom to do the same. Simply let freedom reign. Number 34, views on capitalism versus socialism. I think capitalism is the most fair way to get paid for the efforts you put into this world. Out of the two, I prefer capitalism, but it does have flaws. It can be monopolized, just like the game Monopoly. Looking around, our country is kind of like the Monopoly game with an elite few running everything. Look at BlackRock and Vanguard. Socialism is a great idea on how to make things fair, and where one person or group doesn't get all the power to own the Monopoly game. By default, this does put all the power in a group of people's hands, though. It's just the government instead of rich individuals. At the end of it all, I feel greed is a possibility, and putting all the power in anyone's hands is a bad idea. Also, the only way to make socialism happen is to have the government take from the people and then redistribute it. The first problem is you can't take other people's stuff without consent. The taking of someone's possessions against their will is theft. The only way around that is to make it voluntary. The second problem is you have to give government absolute trust and control, and history shows giving any group of people too much power eventually leads to corruption and mass genocide. I have an idea to intertwine the best of both ideas. The government wants a great reset that gives them absolute control through a digital dollar. That is terrifying to think about. We have to do all we can to prevent a digital dollar because it will give the government absolute control over everything. But a reset of sorts isn't a bad idea, but giving them complete control definitely is. If we had a new currency based on a tangible object, we could equally disperse it out to everyone and then let capitalism take over from there. People can invest it wisely or invest it poorly, but it's their decision. The most important part is we always let the free market flourish. Stifling the free market is what has allowed the system to become so corrupted. Competition always dictates the natural order of things economically, and we must always allow economic freedom. We must be able to run a business freely without any government interference whatsoever, unless someone has been harmed, in which due process must hold all those involved accountable. To overcome this, I've invented a currency based on a renewable tangible object, kind of like a gold standard, but from a resource we can use for everything, and is also renewable: hemp. Having similar community-based currencies would ensure big governments couldn't manipulate the currency. Number 35, views on religion. Religious freedom should be absolutely honored, and one's religious freedom should never be infringed, unless someone is harmed. I also feel all religions should be left out of politics, as it has no place for it. Religions logically should be kept out of politics because there will always be someone who feels differently or sees things from a different perspective. Even people who worship in the same building see religion differently than the person sitting next to them. Therefore, religion should never be involved in government, as it is sure to create conflict. In order to keep it all fair and open, just remove religion completely and simply run government by the morals your politician presents. If you don't want someone else's religion in charge of your government, then you can understand why it might create conflict. Number 36, views on race. The more we talk about it, the more animosity we bring up. We have absolutely no control over what our ancestors did or what has happened in the past. We must let all of it go if we ever hope to move forward. If not, animosity will always be created from both sides. Once again, I feel those in power deliberately divide us on this issue to control us. Stop making it an issue and just start loving each other. Number 37, views on taxes. Taxation is theft. All taxes should be voluntary. Local businesses can post voluntary rates and where they can go on their front door, allowing customers to voluntarily support the business they want. From there, we get a multiple choice list of what we want to fund with our taxes and how much we wish to apply, thus allowing Republicans to fund their ideas and Democrats to fund their ideas. And we all voluntarily pay taxes to the things we wish to support. Number 38, views on energy. I think alternative energies are the answer. However, I think everything we are doing now is flawed. We could make much cleaner, more efficient energy, but the inventions are silenced. I know there are inventions that are much more energy efficient sources of energy, and some are even over unity. I personally am giving away an invention that produces mass amounts of power and is made from nothing but steel and copper. It uses gravity and the limitless energy source of weight going downhill. I know this has the potential to be the most efficient source of energy we have. Number 39, views on the federal government. I think we should limit the powers of the federal government to be that of defending the country from foreign invaders on our own soil, and that's it. Let it be known that we as a nation are all united, and we will always stand up together to any outside threat and protect this country. We are all brethren, and will always stand up for each other. It has become apparent that the federal government has become corrupted and is too large and powerful for us to control. The system is currently left unchecked, and money runs the system. The only way to get the power back to the people is to distribute the power to a smaller scale that can be managed more efficiently by the people. Let everything be decided at the state or even county level. The smaller the government, the more power we the people have. At some point, we have to stand up and take our freedoms back. Peacefully succeeding is the most logical way, but always stay united in defending each other. Number 40, views on war. If you look at wars through history, it always has something to do with greed or power for our leaders. If we could somehow collectively stand up and let our leaders know when we want peace, we could change the world. Violence begets violence. Anytime there is conflict, there will always be blowback and people who hold resentment and grudges. We have to realize the consequences of our actions and stop contributing to these conflicts. I know we can be civilized enough that we can create peace in this world. Until that happens, we will have wars. I think all bombs and weapons of mass destruction should be destroyed, including nuclear, chemical, and biological. These weapons are guaranteed to hurt innocent children, women, and men. We have to stop hurting innocent people. There is no justifying harming children, ever. From there, sign war contracts and go to war away from people where no one innocent gets hurt. If anyone innocent is harmed, hold everyone accountable. If I was president, I would lead by example and swear to destroy all bombs and weapons of mass destruction, as long as every other country did too. If a country held out, I would challenge the male leader to a fistfight. Nothing on the line as far as the country goes, but I would put all my possessions and all my honor on the line. I would fight for peace in this world. At the very least, we are civilized enough to not harm innocent people. I would be the first one to put myself out there first before anybody else. Number 41, views on foreign affairs. Do unto others what you want done unto you. Bring all the troops home. Also bring all the weapons and all the other items we have taken over their home. Use the troops to protect our borders and make our country stronger than ever. Number 42, views on police and courts. I believe in justice and due process. We have to hold people accountable for their actions when they hurt someone else. Justice is the foundation for a civilized society. I have an idea for a justice box that ensures justice no matter what. I believe in the no victim, no crime principle. I would focus all resources from the sheriff's office on solving crimes, thus letting criminals know they will get caught if they hurt someone. It seems many criminals go free because resources are being wasted generating money for victimless crimes. I also feel that the community service should be replace monetary punishment. A $100 fine is not equal to everyone, but time is. And if a person works to make their community better, they will not want to harm it. Plus, we can use the community service to help the community, like tending a community garden or orchard, or even helping with county jobs. Number 43, views on currency. Our currency is completely manipulated and is a total fraud. We have to have a tangible object backing our currency, or it can be manipulated. Research the Libor scandal that was worth $500 trillion. The gold standard that we had was great, and currently is the best logical solution. But logically, it can be monopolized too. So a renewable tangible object would be optimal, one that we could use for a lot of things. I invented a hemp-based currency. We would create a hemp depot to make it all happen. We could grow hemp and take it to get hemp dollars. From there, take the resources created and use them in the community. Hemp has all kinds of uses. Hempcrete, clothing, oil, plastics, even the seeds. Hemp seeds have more nutritional value than sunflower seeds. Henry Ford was on the cover of Popular Mechanics in the 1930s with a car made from hemp and ran on hemp. We could be growing our own clean fuel locally. Hemp is also a sponge for CO2, so it would repair damage done to the planet. Number 44, views on global warming. I feel the government uses this to keep us divided. I think science can be manipulated, and is manipulated on both sides. I know we are trashing the planet. I also know the Earth goes through cycles and we are coming out of an ice age. Whether or not we are causing the Earth temperature to rise is up for a debate, and that word is used as such to keep us confused. To me, the climate change debate is distracting from the fact that we are destroying the environment. There is no debate about the mass harm we are doing to nature. Views on nature. In order for us to not be a parasite set for self-destruction, we have to produce more than we consume. Simple math dictates if you consume more than you produce, over time you will run out of said consumable resource. Science can be manipulated and sold to the highest bidder, but there is no denying we are destroying the planet at an alarming rate. We all share this planet, and it's not even ours. We are just borrowing it from future generations. If you harm the planet, you harm everyone, including future generations. So we have to work together to do all we can to respect nature. Anyone who harms it massively should face jail sentences, not fines. Fines can be passed to consumers, but jail sentences for CEOs can't be passed off. If we made jail sentences mandatory for those who majorly harm the environment, we would see things get cleaned up very quickly. The Green New Deal is just a way for the government to get more power and more money. Taxing us for carbon won't make us use less. It will just harm the economy and be passed to the consumers already struggling to get by. The only outcome will be to create more money and power for politicians. Number 46, views on healthcare. The healthcare system is monopolized and controlled. The free market has been stifled, allowing hospitals to get away with charging outrageous prices that are way overinflated. Instead of forcing everyone to pay for this overly inflated price through a tax, we should let freedom be the answer. Let the free market and free will take over. Deregulate everything. From there, competitive prices will come into effect, making everything much more reasonable and efficient. Ultimately, we should have the freedom to help anyone we want, or also see any doctor we want. If there is no victim, there is no crime. And historically, nature has always offered a solution to any problem. Taking pills for everything is a recent strategy that clearly has side effects. Our bodies are made to adapt, and anything we take, our bodies will react to. Hence, tolerances, or the need for multiple medications because of side effects. We need to start addressing the cause of our problems, and not just look for easy cures in the form of a pill. We have to do the work on what is causing our ailments and try to fix that. Obviously, this won't work for all illnesses, but it does apply for a majority. Ultimately, the main problem is the medical system can charge whatever they want. Creating a free market will drive down costs and make medical costs feasible to the average budget again. Number 47, views on LGBTQ. Everyone should be absolutely free and equal in this world to love someone how they feel. No rights or freedoms should ever be taken because someone believes differently. Anyone should be able to marry whoever they feel. I personally believe you genetically can't change who you are, but I respect your decision to decide whatever you choose. I will always advocate for freedom. I have two limits from my perspective. From where I feel harm is happening and freedom must be limited. Due process decides these limits. The first limit is permanently modifying a child's body before they are 18. This should be a crime for the custodial person in charge of the child. The ability to think at an adult level must be achieved before making such a rash, irreversible decision. Kids don't always have the best ideas. I know I didn't. So anyone who allows this to happen should face due process. Laws are designed to be broad, and sometimes a case-by-case scenario needs examined. That's why due process works so well. The second limit is if you have genitals other than what is declared on the public bathroom and a child sees your alternate gender, that is a crime. If a person wants to use a different bathroom than your original gender, and they can keep it private where no one sees it, then so be it. As long as no showing of genitalia or staring at others' genitalia goes on, no victim, no crime. But if a person, especially a child, is subject to seeing a gender other than their own, I believe a crime has been committed and due process should occur. I think that local communities can decide the line on what dictates harm. We can help advocate for our perspectives on a local level, but that's as far as our input matters. Locally is where everything should be decided. As long as no one is harmed, freedom should always be the answer. Number 48, views on science. Science can be manipulated by deliberately not including variables. Money can influence someone's ability to address variables. Science is a great tool and should always be questioned, as that's what advances us. We constantly learn more about things we thought we knew. What we don't know is infinite, so science is always subject to change merely out of cosmic possibility. We should use science as much as possible and always learn all we can, but use it with caution and always question everything, as that is the core principle of science. There are always more variables. Number 49, views on food system. Our entire food system is trash, and we depend on the system being connected for survival. If the system ever falters, we will starve. So logically, we have to be able to create our own food for survival. I think we should all go back to growing gardens and having chickens in the backyards. Cities can do this too in an urban environment with old warehouses. If we grow our own food, we can make sure it's free from chemicals and it won't be overly processed. If we are self-sufficient, we can have true freedom as we will be able to survive under any circumstance. If we depend on the systems for survival, then we are not free. Self-sufficiency is the only way we can truly achieve freedom. Number 50, views on energy. We have to let alternative energy inventions flourish. I believe inventions are deliberately being silenced to keep the power in the hands of those who currently run things. If these inventions had the opportunity to flourish, we would change the world. All the methods for energy we currently use have some kind of negative side effect. Those in control of the current energy forms don't like competition and work to silence any competitors or threats to their profits. We need to work together to open source inventions for more efficient methods. If we work together, we can accomplish anything. Giving away these inventions and open sourcing them is key. This way, they can't be silenced by having the patents sold or banned, or having something mysterious happen to the inventors. We will be able to collectively work together to make these inventions as efficient as possible. Number 51, views on prescription drugs. I perceive pharmaceuticals as just the same as street drugs. I think if a doctor doesn't warn you about addiction when prescribing a narcotic, they should be put in jail. Same with a pharmacist. We are putting these doctors and pharmacists in a situation of trust, and if they don't warn us about addiction in the product they sell us, they should face charges. We have to acknowledge the reality that prescriptions are just as dangerous and addictive as any street drug. Realize both street drugs and pharmaceuticals have the same exact drugs in them. Fentanyl is not only a street drug, but is also a pharmaceutical drug as well. It is very hard to find the numbers on how much is actually being prescribed, but I suspect the number is much larger than most people would expect. I know historically, it's the opiate-based pharmaceuticals that have been killing more people than anything else. People like pharmaceuticals because they know what they will be getting and know it will be good. Legal drugs are the most dangerous drugs in the country. We have to acknowledge the fact addictions are happening and do all we can to prevent addiction instead of prospering from it. Let's hold doctors and pharmaceutical companies responsible for the fact they are the biggest drug dealers and cause of overdose in the country. Number 52, views on street drugs. Let's change our views and look at it the same way we should with prescription addicts. Acknowledge the fact that addictions are happening and try to help people struggling with addiction. Instead of ripping drug users from their families and putting them in a jail cell or giving them outrageous fines, let's offer them rehab instead. There is always a jail cell open, but never a rehab. Let's flip that script. Instead of treating addicts like criminals, let's try to treat them like someone who is going through a hard time and try to help them out. In the long run, it will be much more conducive. Instead of treating street drug users poorly while ignoring prescription addicts, how about we just try to help stop the addiction in the first place? I think ultimately it's our individual freedom to do what we wish, and that drugs should be legal. If a person wants to bang their head against a wall, they legally can. There is no difference in hurting yourself with drugs, much less the double standard that street drugs and pharmaceuticals have the same ingredients. As heartbreaking as it is, freedom should still be honored. If someone breaks a law like theft or child neglect because of drug addiction, hold them accountable for those crimes. But if there is no victim, there is no crime. Finally, Drug dealers should be held to the same standard as pharmacists and doctors. If they don't warn their customers about the harm of addiction, they should face jail sentences and be held accountable as well. If you give out drugs of any kind, legal or illegal, you should be mandated to warn your customer of addiction, as you have the possibility of creating a victim if they don't know what they're getting into. If they know, it's their own choice and free will to take that risk. If we work together as a society to not only acknowledge addiction's prevalence, but actually work to help stop it, we can fix the cause and source of the problem instead of just prospering from it. But it takes an actually caring and being involved personally. Depending on the government to fix a problem will never work. It's up to us to put our arms around those we love, or those struggling, and try to help bring them up. Number 53, views on peace. All I want to do is try to create peace in this world. It seems we are destined for self-destruction, I agree. With our weapons advancing at the rate they are, the only option we have to prevent self-destruction is to create peace. I believe freedom is the core principle that will enable priests, as we all just want the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone. It's when we are forced to do something against our will that creates tension. So creating a truly free society will create peace in this world. Number 54, view on technology. I think it's a great thing, but we need to not depend on it for survival. An EMP, or even a natural event like a solar flare, could wipe out technology. So we are completely dependent to a fragile supply chain that could go down easily. Something as simple as a solar flare like the Carrington event could wipe out all electronics. We need to be prepared to live without technology at any given moment. Number 55, view on human trafficking. I think there should be a clarification on what is happening here. Prostitution is no longer spoken of because it has been categorized into this classification of human trafficking. I think two people should be able to freely do what they want as long as they don't harm anyone. So I believe prostitution should be legal. No victim, no crime. Technically, they could just say it's a porno and legally get away with exchanging money just the same. I do not think it is fair to those who are being harmed to put them in the same class as someone who voluntarily does something. Doing so spreads the police resources out further, thus giving cops less time to help those that desperately do need help. But as far as being drugged, kidnapped, or forced to do things against their will, I think we should be doing all we can to seek extreme justice. We should take the police officers that are spending time on victimless crimes and instead use them to solve these cases. With the digital world we live in, they could spend the time going to businesses' cameras and tracking these people down. So my solution is to stop going after victimless crimes and fight extremely hard against those that are harming people or kids. Relentlessly hunt those that are kidnapping people. Prioritize our resources and work with everything we have to track down these people committing these crimes. Open up to the communities and ask for any and all help we can get. I guarantee communities would do all they can to help find these criminals too. Hunt these people down and hold them accountable. Prosecute them to the fullest extent possible. Number 56, view on qualified immunity. I think this should be abolished and everyone should be equally held accountable for their actions. Police officers should be held accountable to all the same laws as us, or even held to a higher standard. They should not be given a pass to do what they want, as that leaves the door wide open for corruption. This law is one of the biggest problems in the system, but is blamed on racism to shift the responsibility and divide us further. Number 57, view on government control during an epidemic. Nature is beyond our control, and freedom must always be honored. Any question must be answered with the most freedom possible. Never infringe on someone's ability at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's all our own responsibility on how we handle things. We can never force someone to do something against their will. If you are worried about public air, don't go out in public. It's our own responsibility on how we handle life and its obstacles, no one else's. Number 58, views on the UN. I think that we should be independent as a country and not be part of the UN. It is too much power and too much control for any group of people. I would withdraw immediately if given the opportunity. Number 59, views on tariffs. Logically, having tariffs ensures your country has the first chance at creating the local goods it needs. I feel all countries and communities should be as self-sufficient as possible. But with the day and age we live in, we depend on the goods we get from other countries for our survival. So if we put a tariff on a country that gives us products we rely on, like microchips, we're only harming ourselves. The cost of it all will be passed directly back to the consumer, and the only outcome will be more money for the government at our expense. And finally, any tariff aimed at one country in particular is economic warfare and should be addressed as such. A broad tariff that is equal on all goods from all countries is the only fair and logical way to do it. Number 60, views on foreign policy. Bring all our troops and equipment home. Stop all foreign aid and invest that money in our country instead. If a person wants to help other countries, they can voluntarily decide to do so themselves. Stop all foreign aid and use our money to help our country. Number 61, view on the electronic currency. I feel this is the biggest threat to our freedom that we face. If a government has all-out control of a currency, we will lose all our freedoms. We will also be completely helpless if the grid ever goes down. Research China and the social credit score they have. Having control over currency allows them to control over every aspect of your life. Number 62, views on the housing crisis. I feel this is a distraction from inflation and the fact our dollar is collapsing. Historically, our population rate has risen over 10 to 20% a decade. We are currently growing at 5% a decade. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to keep up with the homes for the rate of lives being created. The problem is money. There's plenty of homes and possibilities out there. We just aren't using them. Many homes sit vacant because of a struggling economy. Also, we have drifted away from the family element. Families and multi-generations could live and work together to get by if need be. However, society has changed our mentality and individualized us to where we no longer strive for the family element as much. There's plenty of housing and ability for housing. We just have to live within our means and work together. Fixing our currency problems would also solve this problem as well. Number 63, views on childcare. Once again, the problem is government. Inflation and money is a clear root problem, but that is never addressed. Another problem is that daycare's ability to freely run itself has been stifled by government regulation. The overreach of government has made running a daycare very inefficient, thus making the entire child care system struggle. Businesses should be free to prove themselves and adopt any business model they can choose, and people can freely choose to use them or not. At this day and age, we can hold any bad daycares accountable publicly and legally. The government is the problem on why it's so hard for everyone in this aspect. And finally, they have taken the family element out of everything. If we work together as families and let our families watch our kids, this would solve a lot of the problem as well. Once again, multiple generations working together as one element is what has historically worked for mankind. Number 64, views on women's rights. Women should be allowed any and all equal rights as a man, no exceptions. I do believe men are built differently and that some jobs may be more suitable for men. It doesn't mean women can't do it, it just means men generally have a better physical capability of doing it as a whole. Therefore, logically speaking, men will be better suited for certain jobs and should be hired on a basis as such. I also believe having biological men compete in women's sports is not fair, as genetically it's an unfair advantage, as men are simply built stronger by nature's laws. Number 65, views on oceans and waterways. We all share the waterways of this world. We have to do all we can to preserve them and keep them clean. Any pollution that goes into the waterway pollutes everything else downstream until it eventually pollutes the ocean. There is only so much pollution the ocean and our waterways can handle until we create major consequences for our actions. The earth and all its creatures are connected, and water is all of our number one source for survival. We must always do all we can to protect our waterways. Giving jail time instead of fines to anyone who majorly pollutes waterways is a huge step. Let's all do everything we can to keep our waterways clean. Number 66, views on refugees. We should allow any peaceful person from any country to come live here. We just have to verify their intentions and their history. If someone has a bad current criminal history or states bad intentions, we should not allow them in the country. Other than that, we should do all we can to allow anyone the freedom to live here. Number 67, views on lobbyists. I feel taking of money or favors is a bribe. I also feel that allowing money to run the system leaves our freedoms up for sale. The only thing stopping our loss of freedoms due to greed are politicians' morals and integrity, which is proven to fail us because humanity is naturally greedy. We must take money out of the politics in every way. Number 68, views on inflation and the possible dollar collapse. The Federal Reserve is not a federal entity and has hardly any oversight. They are printing money and manipulating the system through interest and inflation. When you print money, it causes inflation and it values all the other money out there. You can look at history and the collapse of other currencies and see what will happen. Eventually, hyperinflation will take over and it will take billions of dollars to buy a loaf of bread. We have to stop the Federal Reserve's ability to print and manipulate money. We have to create some kind of tangible resource to back our economy. Number 69, views on the economy. The free market should always be the answer when dealing with everything. The free market creates competition and freely regulates the product or services being distributed, thus ensuring the best, most efficient ideas flourish. Currently, the government stifles the free market in order to help corporate monopolies. These corporations then have lobbyists by politicians and pass 1,000-page laws that they don't read, which in turn takes more of our freedoms and stifles the free market further, which then gives the corporations more money to buy more politicians. It's a vicious cycle, but freedom will fix it all. Anything the government does could be done more efficiently in the private sector in a competitive market. Logically, the government could allow multiple organizations from the private sector to offer services, and we could voluntarily choose which one gets our money based on productivity, thus opening the government to the free market in which the entire system would be run much more efficiently. So now for the next part, commonly asked community questions. Number 70, what is your view on license plate readers? I feel they are unconstitutional and is an invasion of privacy as it gives the government too much power to track you. The Fourth Amendment of the Constitution states that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. To me, a license plate reader is an unreasonable search of my belongings, and my constitutional right is now being violated by not having probable cause to search for and track my vehicle and my location. If anyone has any other questions they would like answered, just ask and I will be happy to give my response. And now, closing statements. Number 71. All I am trying to do is create peace in this world. I see hard times in the future. War and a dollar collapse seem inevitable if we continue on the path we are currently going down. We have to do something to stop these things from happening, or at the very least prepare for when it does. Self-sufficiency as an individual and working together as a community are the most logical answers on how to prepare. Doing so will also give us freedom from a corrupt government, as well as freedom from a dependency on the supply chain. To me, it seems that eventual turmoil is inevitable, and I am doing all I can to try and help warn and prepare people. The government seems to have a digital dollar ready and a plan for total control. We must do all we can to retain some kind of tangible currency in order to preserve freedom. Ultimately, focusing on freedom will solve any problems in this world. A truly free market would regulate the economy and put a check on the monopolies this broken system is allowed to flourish. And above all, freedom will stop all the anger and resentment we have towards each other. We are all mad because we are forced against our will to live by other standards we don't agree with. If we are given the freedom to do our own thing and be left alone, there will be no need for conflict. As long as we don't harm anyone, freedom should always be the answer. And if someone is harmed, due process and justice should always be the answer. Neither freedom nor justice seem to be honored, and fixing these fundamental problems at their core will fix everything else. It seems our freedoms have been sold to the highest bidder. Justice seems lost as well, and is sold to the highest bidder too. At this point, we have no option. We have to fix things. It's either self-destruct or overcome our obstacles and differences. I know we can fix things. We just have to try. Please, let's put aside our differences and work together to ensure the best ideas for both freedom and justice prevail. Please, let's let love win. Thank you.